Be they stalwart protectors clad in plate, powerful druids shapeshifted into towering bears, elusive monks, or mighty demon hunters, the tank is the character that protects their friends. But how do you tank? Well, let me show you. Hello there and welcome to the Tanking Guide. Over this series of videos we will discuss everything you need to know to become a master tank. In the last lesson we learned the basic rotations for each tanking class, going over what resources each tank uses and how to best generate and spend those resources to mitigate damage, deal damage, and maintain survivability. In this lesson, we're going to discuss one of the big concepts that advanced players like to throw around a lot: situational awareness. Now this is something often discussed but very rarely explained fully by players that know what it is. Mostly because good situational awareness is something that becomes instinctive regardless of what class or role you're playing as. So, let's discuss just what situational awareness is and why it's really quite important to becoming an ace tank. Now, let's get started. So, what is situational awareness? To put it simply, situational awareness is knowing what is going on around you. It's knowing where fire on the ground is. It's knowing where enemies are. It's knowing what abilities are being cast by enemies. It's knowing what the environment is doing. It's knowing where allies are and what they're doing. It's also knowing what's going to happen as well. In essence, it is an awareness of the situation you're in. In my humble opinion, there is no such thing as having or not having situational awareness. Instead, I see situational awareness as a constantly shifting meter. Any player can potentially have low or high awareness of what is going on around them. Your goal as a tank is to maintain as high a level of situational awareness as possible, because if you don't notice something important happening, like new enemies attacking from behind the group or fire appearing under your feet, then you and everyone in your team is going to suffer. So, how do you raise your situational awareness? Well, it's all about information. Your goal is to get and understand as much information as you can without going overboard and flooding yourself with useless information. There are a few basic things you can do in order to increase the amount of information you're getting. But before we get started, it's important to note something here. Situational awareness is an advanced concept, and although it forms the bedrock of a master tank, it's important that it doesn't become your sole focus. You still have plenty of other things to worry about, from threat to survival to control to your rotation, so I would suggest familiarizing yourself with those concepts before thinking too hard about raising your situational awareness. However, if you feel comfortable, let's discuss methods to increase your awareness of what's going on around you. First, your camera. This is the main means by which you have to receive information, by actually, seeing things happen. Whether it be a group of enemies moving into attack, a wall of fire, or an ally out of position, the game world is going to be the first thing communicating this to you, because that's where the thing is happening. So, it's important that you get the most out of your camera. It is the means that you have to examine the game world. One very simple mistake you can make is to keep your camera just firmly locked behind you and not really pay any attention, when in truth, you can do a lot of great things with the camera. One of the first things you should do is go into your game menu, enter the interface options menu, find the camera tab, and change the max camera distance slider to the furthest that you can. This will allow you to zoom your camera out much further, which lets you see more of any given situation, because you're seeing more of the world. At first, this can be a little bit strange, but once you get used to it, it will help you raise your situational awareness, because you're seeing more. The next thing you can do with your camera is learn to move and position it. More often than not, your field of view is going to be obscured by enemies, so it's important that you learn to move your camera around as much as you feel comfortable with. Like I said, one of the easiest mistakes you can make is to keep it still. Now, a lot of highly skilled tanks will maneuver their camera around almost all of the time, swinging it left and right, doing 180s, 360s, all kinds of stuff, to get a near 360-degree picture of what is going on around them. This can be a little overwhelming at first, and it all really depends on what you're comfortable with, so try to move your camera at a comfortable speed. Although having a high mouse sensitivity will allow you to move your camera around easily, try to focus on what you're comfortable with and build it from there, reaching out of your comfort zone a little bit each time to swing your camera around faster until it becomes instinctive to look around as much as you can. A lot of players will use this technique regardless of their role to know what's going on around them, so that they can react as quickly as possible to all kinds of things, be it new enemies spawning, maybe a patrol of enemies is heading their way and they can get CC in or they can move in to tank it. Healers can even see things like bolts of energy flying through the air towards certain players and preempt the damage by starting a cast time healing spell before the damage has even hit them. Situational awareness and seeing this stuff in the game world is the baseline of all of that. Now, when moving your camera around, you're going to be looking for enemies, allies, the design of the environment, and anything dangerous on the floor or in the air. Those are the basic things. Sometimes it'll be a bit different. Sometimes you'll be looking for things like game objects, but in general, those are what you're looking for. You're going to want to look at where enemies are and how they're moving. If they're moving towards the group and they're not in combat, you need to react by either moving away or by intercepting them so that you have threat. You also need to keep an eye on where your allies are, because if someone is out in the middle of nowhere and about to get attacked by enemies, or an enemy is spawning near them, you need to know where they are so you can react. The design of the environment is also important. Keep an eye out for things like big pitfalls, pools of anything green, yellow, or red, spikes, fire, or anything else that looks like it could hurt you. Remember that big enemies will often knock you back, so if you know where the nasty stuff is, you can position yourself so that you're knocked back into a safe location. This extends to looking for bad things like fire that enemies create as well. This is an oft-toted line, but it is doubly important for a tank, and if you learn anything from this video, it should be this: don't stand in the bad. Okay, so your camera is showing you loads of information, and moving it around as much as you can without getting confused is important. But how else can you be presented with information? Well, a quick and great way to see enemies is by turning nameplates on. You can do this in the interface, names menu, but you can also hit the default key of V to turn enemy nameplates on. This lets you see them a little bit easier and will also let you see when multiple enemies are casting spells. This can let you react to them, and it will help you control a situation. Another technique to increase your situational awareness is your team itself. They all have health bars like you do, and you have ways of tracking their health and status. Your group or raid frames will often let you know when someone is under attack. A great way to detect when a teammate has engaged enemies without your knowledge is when you see their health go down. If you're not in combat, or even if you are in combat and you see someone's health suddenly drop, try to look over to them quickly with your camera to see if they've got an enemy attacking them. Quick reactions are key here, because more often than not, they're in serious danger of dying if they have attacked an enemy. So it's often a good idea to have your group or raid frames in a position where you can see them fairly easily. If someone's health spikes down, check out the area around them and quickly prepare a taunt to save their life. This also extends to your own health as well. It is an indication of how much damage you are taking. A lot of the times, if an enemy gains a buff or a debuff, you can look at your user interface and see that, but your health is something you need to keep an eye on. If it suddenly spikes really low, something is wrong, and you need to figure out what that thing is quickly. Maybe you're standing in something bad, and remember, don't stand in the bad. Maybe the enemy is standing in something that increases their damage. Maybe they have a buff or a debuff that increases their health. Some enemies will have abilities that either root them in place or slow them down, but also dramatically increases the damage that they deal. One thing you can do here is to run away from them and kite them. This technique is called kiting. It prevents an enemy from reaching you until, say, that buff or debuff on you or them falls off. So your health is also another means by which you can get information. Now, I'm not going to suggest many add-ons in this tanking series, but if you want to increase your awareness to enemy abilities, then I would suggest getting hold of a boss mod. Download either deadly boss mods or bigwigs, don't get them both. Both of these can be found as links in the description. A boss mod will allow you to see timers and warnings for enemy abilities, so you get extra information when something is going on. They're often designed to be more intrusive the more dangerous an ability is, so if it shouts something at you, you will know it's important. This is a good way to increase your awareness. But be careful not to overdo it and rely on boss mods. This is a huge and common pitfall for a lot of players. Relying on boss mods rather than their own instincts and the camera and health bars and sound and other such things that we'll talk about in just a second is a very common problem with newer players. Boss mods help, but they do not replace your own instincts. Your camera remains the best way for you to get information. Sound is also a great way to understand what's going on. Most bosses are voice acted with professional good voice acting, and they'll shout something whenever they cast a certain ability. Most of the time, they'll be using abilities quite often, and they will repeat the lines that they say, so you can learn to associate a certain line with a certain mechanic or ability that you have to deal with. You can use this to help you react to or preempt an ability, but another great way that sound helps is by helping you react when someone is under attack. If someone nearby is being attacked by enemies, you will often hear them. You'll hear the sounds of combat. This is a huge red light to you. If combat is happening and you're not involved, look around with your camera, find the source, and get involved. This won't always be the case, but sound can often tell you when something is going to happen, or is already happening, and you can't see it. So play the game with sound on. You don't need the in-game music on to help with this, so you can listen to your own music in the background, but at least have sounds on so that you can familiarize yourself with what combat sounds like, so that when the time comes and something is like behind you or to the sides, you can't see it, but you can hear it, you are immediately put on alert, you know it's there, and you can react to it or even preempt it. Good little tip here, a lot of enemies have a sound that they play when they first attack someone. A good example of this is humans, they go kind of, huh, when they first attack. Huh! Not when they like swing or they get hit or they cast a spell. When they first enter combat with a player, they will go, huh! Or some of the kind of variation of it. Ogres will like go, roar! All that kind of stuff. I can make plenty of funny noises, but you get the point. Sounds like that will warn you when enemies have engaged. And if you're not in combat when you hear those noises, be aware something is happening. Before we end this video, it's important that you practice these techniques. In particular, spend time with your camera getting the sensitivity just right, so that you can keep it moving at a decent speed. Your goal is to never miss anything that happens around you. And although this isn't going to happen 100% of the time, you're going to want to aim for that. So take your time to learn how to move your camera around. If you are right-handed, keep your right hand on your mouse at all times, and bind your keys so that you can activate abilities without clicking on them. I've created a guide for key binding, which you can find on screen now or in the description. It should help you kind of figure out what keys to bind and how you can kind of place your hand on your keyboard and your mouse so that you can be as optimal as possible. That will conclude this lesson about situational awareness. It's an instinct that you build up over time, but once you've got the concepts into your playstyle, you'll probably never stop using situational awareness. You'll be seeing and reacting to things that happen as quickly as you can, quite often faster than other people, which is the mark not only of a great tank, but of a great player. There is no situation in the entire game where knowing what's going on around you is a bad thing. And by staying on top of what's going on, you can make clever, rational decisions, analyze mistakes that you and your team makes. Remember, mistakes are not the end of the world, and situational awareness won't always save you, and generally, you will have a better idea of how this game works. In our next lesson, we'll take time to discuss a few helpful add-ons that will make your life much easier. They aren't necessary, but if you want to push yourself to become a better tank, get more information, and play to a higher level, add-ons are a great place to start your advancement. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments or suggestions, you can contact me using the links in the description, or you can just leave a comment. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I wish you the best of luck in the world of Warcraft.